With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
From January through March, in honor of MLK Jr. Day, Black History Month, and Women's History Month, Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey is teaming up with our account partners and our Uncle Nearest Whiskey family to raise up to $1 million for historically black colleges and universities through the sale of old-fashioned cocktails and Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey products. Visit oldfashionedcocktail.com to learn more and to join the Uncle Nearest HBCU Old Fashioned Challenge today.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight, live here in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, my bourbon drinking buddy, Matt. Matt, how you doing it there, man?
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good, Matt. You know, it's funny, we took a week off last week. We'd done this show at the Bourbon Con back in January, and you and I missed a week, man. So it's kind of weird that we're not, when we don't get to spend the week together.
I know.
We're apart for 2 weeks, Matt. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, my friend.
It does. I had to dust off my little stool here by the fireplace, but it's all good. You got the fire's roaring for me. It's nice and cozy here in the Bourbon Life Studios. But last week's show was probably far better because Stacy was your co-host. So
that's right.
The show is certainly better looking than it is tonight. That's for sure on the Bourbon Life front. Man.
Yeah, I got you, man. Well, hey, we do need to thank all of our sponsors. So I should do that, right? Pay the bills. So thank you to all of our sponsors who deal with us and put up with us and support us and allow us to do this week after week. We have a great time doing this show, and we thank you guys for all you do for us. And Matt, with that said, why don't we just jump right into the show? If you want to tell everybody who we have with us.
Let's do it. It's going to take me probably about 20 minutes here of the first segment to get everything out here. But our guest tonight is, all right, let's go for it. He is the host of ESPN's Whiskey Neat. He is the owner and managing director of Gregarious Grump Spirits and also the co-founder of the Prideful Goat, and you can find him on Instagram at Whiskey Pete. Joining us from Houston, Texas, is Kristopher Hart. Kristopher, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks for having me. That wasn't so painful. I mean, you got through it pretty quick. It was nothing.
Hey, I wish it took people that long to introduce me. No, actually, I don't know if I do, but it's
man, it's
a great load of accolades.
Instagram limits. Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, I appreciate it. Instagram limits the amount of characters you can put in your bio, so it's just definitely hard to kind of squeeze it all in there.
Yeah, that's what I was reading your bio the other day, and I'm kind of doing a little research, background, and things. So I'm just digging through all these things, and I'm like, oh, there's another one to add, and I'm like, oh wait, there's another one to add, man. So that's impressive. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. Before we jump into it, though, Matt and I have some drinks poured up, and Kristopher, I'm so sorry because I know I'd sent some samples to you, hoping that you could drink along with us. I know you're going to be drinking along with us, but unfortunately, I don't know, maybe it's President's Day yesterday. Something delayed somehow the delivery, so your samples didn't quite make it. But Matt and I have poured up for this first round. It's the Woodford Double Oak. This is the 2022 batch that just came out, which is weird. It's like the 2022 batch that just got released in January of 2023. So I'm not sure how that works.
Well, the entire supply chain is full of delays for sure. I mean, it feels like used to the Pappy and BTAC drops would start in September, and every year it gets pushed further and further into December. It's a complete nightmare.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with supply chain issues, COVID, everything else, seems like between glass and availability of everything, it seems like it's really delayed a lot of people. So, but that's what Matt and I are going to be sipping on this one. Matt, we'll come back to the nose in just a minute, but let's jump back over to you, Kristopher, if you would. I mean, Matt introduced you, gave a lot of the accolades there. We even left off a few, but let's just talk about you and talk about your background, man. Tell us about who you are and what your background was and your education and how you got into the world of whiskey.
Sure. So first off, I'm matching your vibe. I'm drinking 1920.
Nice.
Okay.
In fact,
nice.
I went back and listened to your episode with Jackie Zykan, who is amazing. I hate that she left Brown Forman. I've always said Brown Forman can do no wrong, and I'm going to change that because I'm not a huge fan of Woodford Reserve on its own, but the double oak and the double oak is absolutely fantastic. So big fan of that pour, even though I don't get to try it with you tonight, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But hey, the 1920, you're right there. You're pretty close, right?
So good. 1910, I think, is also good, just not quite as. 1920 is damn near perfect. Are we allowed to cuss on the show?
Man. You have carte blanche to do and say as you choose, Kristopher. So you knock yourself out, man. We are no holds barred here, man.
So to answer your question, I got started in this probably many years ago. I've told the story on my show a few times, but many years ago I was dating a girl whose father was not a fan of my beautiful red face, and I found out that he was a fan of whiskey. And so I bought myself a bottle of Lafroig 18 and I committed to learning how to drink whiskey. And then I brought it to the family Christmas, and it was the first time we bonded. We had a pour of whiskey. We drank half the bottle together, connected for the first time. And then I ended up marrying that woman. So 4 kids later, and we've been together almost 17 years. Whiskey has been a big part of my marriage from, damn near the beginning. So it's the most fun I've ever had, honestly. I mean, you guys, you're drinking buddies. You know what it's like to get together with friends, to vent, to talk. It's some of the best times that you'll have. So we started shortly after getting married. We went to Scotland. Of course, we did that whole thing. We made several trips to Kentucky, and we started going to whiskey festivals. You mentioned Bourbon Con. I've never actually heard of Bourbon Con. I'm curious to hear a little bit about it, if it's one of the good ones. But a lot of these events have slowly started dying off. And so we started the Houston Whiskey Social, and now it's called the Whiskey Social because we plan on going multiple cities. But we started that in 2015, and 8 years in, we're the largest event in the state. We do about 400 different whiskeys, 2,000 or so people. I mean, it's not Bourbon and Beyond. We're not doing bands and concerts and sort of things. It's mostly focused on education and tasting. And then that led to the show on ESPN, and then led to us starting Prideful Goat and Gregarious Grump. So it just kind of built. It just kind of spiraled. Yeah,
that's really cool. I started the Instagram site back in December 2018, and then Matt and I met at a bourbon release. It brings people together. It really does. And then we just started hanging out, even though there's a significant age. Well, I don't want to say it's significant, but there's an age difference between us. But bourbon brought us.
3 to 5, maybe 2 to 3 years.
We were up at a local liquor barn drinking where we actually met, and we were sitting they have a tasting bar up there, and one of the employees came over one day and said, "I just want to tell you, I think it's so nice." I'm like, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, the fact that you can come up here and drink with your son whenever you want to." I was like, "Damn, that's rough, man." So, but yeah, I digress. But yeah, that bourbon brought us together, so that was a natural outgrowth. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you get into it and things start kind of rolling and opportunities present themselves. So that's really unique. So now, were you always you weren't always in a whiskey drinker? So it was something that you started doing because you wanted to impress a girl's dad?
I wasn't always a whiskey neat drinker. I was a mixer or a cocktail guy. Mm-hmm. Of course, I've always loved old fashions, but it wasn't until my father-in-law, like I had to literally sit down and practice drinking neat so I didn't come off looking like a wuss. It was a lot of work at first.
Now, I don't know a whole lot about Scotch, but Lefroy, is that a Isla? Is that a peated?
Very peated.
That's what I thought.
I didn't know that. It was my first bottle, so my perception was that all Scotch tasted like a rubber boot that spent its life inside a harbor. But I learned to love it. Shortly after I won him over and married my wife, we went to Scotland, and we specifically spent a few days, like about a week on Isla, and hit Lagavulin, Lefroy, Ardbeg, just boom, 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 boom. One of the things that I would encourage all drinkers, I know the bourbon boom has a lot of people drinking only bourbon, but there is a beautiful world of barrel-aged spirits out there, and I highly encourage to diversify your palate. It'll only make you sharper.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm studying for the certified whiskey specialist exam that they're offering, and I'm spending a lot of time not drinking, but reading and learning about Scotch. It's just something that I've never had a palate for. And I think it's because the exposure I've had has been more peated Scotch, and I just can't seem to get past, the descriptions you used were pretty accurate, at least in my opinion. So, but I agree. I mean, there's a wonderful world of spirits out there. So on your show, well, I'll tell you what, Matt, we should probably talk about the nose on this one, because we're going to end up running out of time on the first round. So what do you pick up in terms of this?
Bomb.
Yeah. The 2022 Woodford double oaked.
Yeah, it's definitely double oak. That's for certain. There's that whole ton of oak on there, but it's honestly not as pungent as I was initially expecting. It's well balanced. It definitely brings a lot of those campfire toasted oak, marshmallowy flavors, but I think the rye content in it is also coming through quite well. There's kind of an essence. I almost picked up like a little mint at first, but there's like this great aroma of like a burnt orange that I'm picking up, like burnt orange peel. That's really nice, really unique, just like kind of soft but bright at the same time to cut through a lot of the oak and the nougat, the vanilla, the caramel and marshmallow flavor on it. So it's got something like a little sassy on the nose as well.
Sassy. I like that. Chris Morris would be like, that's awesome. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to write that down. We're double oaked is sassy. Oh, it's a good descriptor. For me, this is always like just so dessert-like. It's 90.4 proof, just like all their other expressions. Everything they put out at Woodford is 90.4 proof. But to me, this one has like a brown sugar, very burnt sugar, brown sugar, almost even get a hint of banana. And I don't know if it's just that whole Brown-Forman thing, where I think in my mind, that it's Brown-Forman, so I might pick up a little bit of a hint of banana. But to me, it seems like I get a little bit, almost like a baked banana pudding. So it's like a warm banana pudding where the sugars have caramelized a little bit, but I still get a little bit of kind of vanilla banana combo. But yeah, man, very, very dessert. Like probably not the best pour maybe to start with, starting with dessert first. So Chris, you're drinking the 1920, man. So talk a little bit about that one.
I mean, I've said this already. I really, truly, I think Old Forester is a perfect brand. What they're producing consistently, and I say Old Forester because Woodford Reserve, as you know, is half Woodford, half Old Forester. They blend it together, and I love visiting the Woodford distillery. I just don't care for their distillate. But by blending with Old Forester, and then of course finishing it in the barrel, and I think they do. Is the implication for the double oak that it spins in two finishing barrels, two new oaks?
It's a double. It's been in one finishing barrel, but it's been in there double the length of what the typical double oaked is. So rather than just 1 year, which is what a standard double oaked is, they actually spend 2 years in that double. So it's just one barrel.
I've thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed their master collection too, except for the cherry one they did a few years back. But literally, it's some of the best liquid that is currently readily available. You can find it most places. It's not super expensive. It's not super highly allocated. The 1920, same thing. One of the best things that, from my understanding, Jackie Zykan was instrumental in that series being launched to begin with. Mm-hmm. And between the 1910 and the 1920, don't get me wrong, Kingsman's actually not bad. I think it just was released out of order. You should have released the Kingsman first, then the 1920, then the 1910, and it would have been home run after home run. It kind of sucks when that happens, because that happens with movies. Like the first Die Hard movie is legendary. It still holds up. It's still good. But there are other films that take the exact same ideas, even sequels, that you're like, this sucks. Well, there's something to say for when you release certain expressions, so to speak.
Yeah,
I can't believe I just tied Old Forester to Die Hard.
I don't know that that's ever been done. It definitely hasn't been done on our show, but hey, that's...
Get a few more drinks in me. I'll find a way to tie to the Holocaust.
That's awesome. And then we're going to be having 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon here in a minute, right? Yeah. So that'll be great. So let's talk about your show. Let's talk about Whiskey Neat. So that kind of grew out of the fact you had the Whiskey Social there in Houston. You had that big event going on, and then how did that go? How'd you kind of parlay that into this radio show on ESPN?
Absolutely. Stupidly lucky, happen chance. So when we started the Whiskey Social, the biggest thing we did was research. We went to other events. We went to other, there's small events, large events, releases, events that happen at bars local to you. And I met a guy named Doug Harris. Now, Doug Harris, in Houston, you guys know Howard Stern. In the 90s, Houston radio was a very big deal. Rock 101, KLOL, it was like this classic era of radio. Well, Doug was the marketing guy that was instrumental to classic radio in Houston. And he somehow got tied up into whiskey. And I run into him at one of these events, and I call him my Yoda. Doug is a very kind guy. I don't tell Doug no. If Doug asks for something, I find a way to make it happen. But Doug, at the same time, was helping us launch our Whiskey Social, was also the marketing guy for ESPN Radio in Houston. And he said that they were looking for someone to do, actually, I take that back. I had mentioned that we wanted to start a podcast. There was this company on the south side of Houston that does podcasts. Turns out, long story short, that company was embezzling money. And I'm really glad we decided not to go with them. But they fell apart. They're no longer in existence. But we wanted to do a podcast. He said, "Hey, don't go through them. Maybe consider going through SportsMap in Houston, which was a radio station on AM. It's no longer in existence. But when SportsMap closed down, we decided that we'd be a perfect fit for each other. We were initially just doing the podcast on SportsMap Radio, which is an AM station. And then when they went away, the show was doing so well. We were getting some pretty decent sized celebrities that they invited us to join the ESPN network. And I said, buddy, I'm in. Yeah. So we partnered with ESPN. We've been on there for almost, this March will be 5 years.
Wow.
I can't believe it's been 5 years. That's pretty awesome. Now that I think about it, I thought that number was lower, but yes, it'll be 5 years at the end of March this year. So in 2 months or in 1 month.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. That's
appreciate
awesome.
It. It's been a fun ride. I mean, you guys have been doing it a while. It's fun. You get to talk to some interesting people, and somehow we ended up getting some pretty decent sized celebrities on. So it just kind of snowballed into something fun, you know?
Yeah. And that's a question that, obviously as a podcaster, our focus is primarily on, master blenders, whatever, but you do have the celebrities that are in the whiskey world or that are getting into the whiskey world, but you just get people that are just like, they're celebrities, and it's like, just come on the show. I mean, it's really cool that you're able to do that, but I'm just curious. I mean, just my own curiosity, how you're able to make that happen. It's like, give me the magic sauce, man. Come on.
Listen, you are not wrong. It's very weird that it happened, but it slowly evolved. It snowballed. It started with a wrestler from the WWE called Matt Raywalt, who just happens to love whiskey. Shout out to Matt. He's got a great Instagram channel called Wrestling with Whiskey.
Nice.
He's got a whole fitness thing where you tie your fitness to drinking. If you're going to drink, you need to work out. Anyways, the guy's great. And then we got TJ Miller, who also loves to drink apparently. And then it just kept building, and then we got William H. Macy and Matthew McConaughey and Katie Sackhoff and Bryan Cranston a couple weeks ago.
I saw that. Yeah.
In fact, right after that interview, Melissa, why am I drawing a blank on her name? Melissa, she was in Bridesmaids.
Melissa McCarthy.
Melissa McCarthy reached out. They were like, hey, Melissa just bought a whiskey brand. She'd love to be your show. And I was like, I would love to drink with Melissa McCarthy. Absolutely. So it just snowballed, man. But trust me, like for every, 5 celebrities a year I get 1,000 no's. I asked Betty White, and 2 weeks later she died.
Oh man.
I mean, there's a running joke with the show because Dave Pickerel, the master distiller for Whistlepig, I was the last interview he did. 2 weeks later, he died.
Oh,
and
man.
then John Witherspoon, great John Witherspoon, 90s black actor, been around a long time. He was in Wayans Brothers. The guy's an absolute legend, hilarious comedian. Last interview he did, 2 weeks later, he died. So there's been this running joke in some of the comment section. Anytime someone that people love does the show, Tom Hanks, Betty White, there's like, no, please don't invite them on the show.
Note to self, Matt, if Kristopher ever gets desperate for guests and calls us.
Yeah, well, you have to be pretty desperate. So.
Oh man, we know what the answer is. Well, Matt, we're close to the end of round 1. So why don't we jump back over to the whiskey, talk about this double oak. What you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
So to me, this is honestly not as sweet, I think, as just a regular double oak. Like oftentimes when you get the double oak, and when we were talking with Chris, he was saying that they intentionally wanted this to be sweet and dessert-like and very oaky and smoky and all those campfire s'mores type flavors. But I don't think this goes as far, even with the name and how much longer it's spent in that secondary barrel. But I definitely get a lot of like a sweet graham cracker cheesecake crust on the bottom.
Man, your descriptors are insane. They're awesome. The amount of creme brulee-esque, like charred banana, your descriptors are better than our good friend Fred Minnick.
I don't know about that, but yeah, it's got like that great graham crackery crust, and definitely smoky and oaky, and all the beautiful caramels and vanillas coming out of it as well. But Mark, to your point, there's a little bit of that kind of that banana or like that creamy, custardy, tangy sweetness on it as well. But just a really well done, as always it is. Everything in balance, and just a beautiful tasting whiskey.
Yeah, and I was happy to be able to score a few bottles of this year. Last year I missed out on, I think I got 1 bottle, but last year's was the rye spice really came through a lot more, and some people were complaining about the fact that it was spicy, which is out of character. I mean, it's obviously the whiskey's already out of balance anyway, because it's out of balance and Chris Morse talked about that. He's like, Woodford Reserve is perfectly balanced, but this is not. So we had the whole discussion on that. Mm-hmm. But last year's people were talking about how spicy it was. But Matt, I agree. There is some spice still in this one. I can't remember what the mash bill is. If they're 18% rye in their normal Woodford, I can't remember. I was thinking it's like 72, 18, 10, but I don't remember for sure. So it's not a surprise that you would get some rye off of that. Get maybe a little spice. But yeah, the dessert-like quality still come through. Not what it was like in that 2018 or 2019 releases that I remember that were just so dessert quality, which is crazy. But these barrels that we talked about before, the 1910, they and Chris talked about that, where they take the barrel and they lightly toast it, but then they heavily char it like alligator char. Or Jackie was talking about that, where it's almost disintegrated, and they use that to put that extra finishing on. But then these barrels, they actually lightly char them, but they heavily toast them. So there is a different process to those barrels. But yeah, it's still a win for me. I'm happy I got some bottles of this, so can't complain. Kristopher, did you get any of the Woodford this year's the double, or do you track it down or try to get it?
We normally, So for the Whiskey Social, one of the things that we do is we found a loophole in Texas law that, you think if you do an event, a whiskey event, you need a whiskey permit or an alcoholic permit. And we found out that we don't actually need one if we do it the right. There's some loopholes we have to jump through. They're all legit. It's not even a loophole. It's a legit way to do things, but it's the exact opposite. You don't need an actual permit. So what we do is it's the only legal way in Texas to bring in anything vintage or highly allocated, which all comes from my personal collection. So What we do is we don't go chasing, but we'll reach out to, we buy everything for the event for one night from 5 stores, give or take. The big box stores and then 5 mom and pop stores. And so I don't get to taste it all year. It gets put into a shelf. And then, same thing with the birthday bourbon. We grabbed last year's. So we just save it up all year. And then in November, we have this big event. So I've not had it this year. I've not had it yet, but it's on the list to add to the collection for the event in November.
Great. Well, and somewhere out there in the world, there's a sample floating around with your name.
Currently being enjoyed by your neighbor on their couch right now.
Your neighbor might be sipping on it right now, man.
As soon as we're over, I'm gonna go knock on some doors and see if I can find it. I'm sure it's in the area. We live in a interesting cul-de-sac, little back corner of the neighborhood. So
I got you.
I'm sure it's there.
All right. Well, guys, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more with Kristopher Hart from ESPN's Whiskey Neat in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, still here live in my Bourbon Life studios, my basement, my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Oh, Mark, always great. Always so happy to be back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast here this evening, this afternoon, this morning, whenever it is you all are listening to us. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. We're like prestige worldwide, man. We have listeners all around the globe. So you just never know what time of day it is when these people in Ghana or Saudi Arabia or China or wherever they're listening to this show. If they can understand our English, then we appreciate them listening. So we're happy to have them along, whatever time of day it might be. But Matt, I'm doing good today, man. I'm having a good time. This is a good show. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to jumping into the second round and learning more about this man of many hats and many talents. So this is a good show. I'm really enjoying it. But we got some things poured up. Oh, I do have to say thank you to all of our sponsors. Of course, I don't want to forget that. But with that said, Matt, tell everybody who we have with us, please.
Absolutely. We have Kristopher Hart, the host of ESPN's Whiskey Neat. You can find him at Whiskey Pete on Instagram. He is also the owner and managing director of Gregarious Grump Spirits and the co-founder of the Prideful Goat. Kristopher, welcome back for round 2.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. It's funny, you guys, do you have a background in recording?
No, I'm an attorney.
Okay. I asked that because the mindset of being mindful of whenever you take a break to come back to reintroduce the guest is something that I have never figured out and always forget to do. And it's something that Doug, the guy I was talking about before, has always been like, hey man, Like if you're on the radio, there's going to be commercial breaks. You're going to hear sponsors. Like remember to reintroduce your guests. It's a nice touch, is what I'm trying to say. It's something that most people don't think about.
Well, I appreciate that. It's just, we're on episode, I think you're number 159. So it's just kind of a routine that we do. It's just kind of the way the show has developed over the years. So, but I appreciate that. Yeah. But no background in radio, just always been an attorney. Matt works in the finance department for the local government here. So,
oh, no.
Yeah. So neither one of us are in any type of journalism or any type of bourbon industry at this point.
What kind of lawyer are you?
I do real estate law. So it's a really boring job. It's better than having to sue people, Christopher. I don't have to go to court and battle with other attorneys anymore. I've done that and lived that life and decided I wanted something a little better. So real estate has paid the bills and afforded me the opportunity to do a lot of different fun things on the side, like the Bourbon Life, which is my passion. So it's a lot of fun for sure. But Matt, we got something poured up this round. You want to tell everybody what we're drinking?
Yeah, I do. This was something you provided for us, Mark, so graciously. And I've actually not had this before. So this is the Bomberger's Declaration from 2022, and that's part of the Michter's Legacy Spirits. So this is 108 proof, non-age statement, and of course mash bill undisclosed, but this is part of a batch aged in Chinkopin oak, right?
Yeah.
I think you're correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they changed the batch a little bit, or they used to, I think, put that information on the bottles, if I remember correctly. I think I read that somewhere, but this year they didn't, but there was information out there about the bottle. But Matt, I was able to get this, and I got the bottle of Shanks, and you ended up with the Shanks as your Christmas present.
That's
man.
right.
So.
Shank you very much.
Oh man, that was really bad.
What can I say?
Anyway, we should jump back and have some good conversation.
Exactly.
Here and forget the bad humor.
See my way out on that bad joke here.
Yeah. So Christopher, we were talking about the show. Like I said, man, you've had some incredible guests on there. So you're talking off air about one of your guests, but I'm just curious, have you ever had a guest to get on there and just say, I don't like whiskey, I don't like drinking, I just, I don't want to do this, or I'm just, just kind of like a buzzkill?
Yeah. There's a couple people who either were not, okay, so one of the things that you mentioned or asked in the past segment was, like, how have you gotten to this point? Well, I say it snowballs, but I left out a piece of that. Out of the 50,000 celebrities in the world of all different caliber, there's only like 3, 4, 5 major publicist agencies. So once you work with one publicist, she may have 12 other actors that she works with and 2 or 3 of them may drink. So I think at one point we had talked to Dolph Lundgren, and the publicist that handles Dolph also handles Sylvester Stallone. So I was like, let's get Sly on here. And what happens is you build a relationship with them, and then they think of you. So sometimes they'll come to you for things. I think that's what Fred has done as well. Fred Minnick Fred's actually working with an agent, so there's a little bit more of a connection there. Buzzkills. So some publicists do not do a good job of prepping the celebrity. And when we sat down with Cyborg from the Justice League movie, Ray something, it's going to bother me. I'm a bad person. Hold on. So Cyborg.
Please, thank you, Google. Yeah.
Ray Fisher. Yeah. Thank you, Google. Ray Fisher. So he walks in, and there is a whole table full of booze, different sponsors, different companies, the Prideful Goat, all of our money makers are right there on the table. And he walks in and he's like, I don't know what this is. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to drink. No one told me about this. I don't know these companies. So I don't want to be seen endorsing them if I haven't properly vetted them. And I I said, it's okay. We don't have to drink. We'll have a conversation. But that episode was, our show is usually an hour. We record for an hour and a half sometimes. That show was 30 minutes. I mean, he's a very nice guy. I don't think it's his fault that he wasn't properly
Right.
Informed.
Right.
But yeah, it does happen. I mean, some people, like I mentioned, TJ Miller wouldn't let us film because he couldn't be seen on camera drinking. TJ's a very nice guy as well. I just think there's some people that have to be more aware of their brand, and they're caught off guard sometimes. So I said, okay,
sure.
Not a problem. In fact, what we did is we started changing our pitch sometimes. Whenever we would approach an agent, like, hey, we've worked together, we've done these interviews together. I see that this person is in your roster, and I'd like to interview them. One of them was Willie Nelson. And
I know what you're doing on that show.
and in the email, it's very like, hey, we've worked together before on these things. These episodes have done really well. We'd like to talk to this person. As you know, Whiskey Neat is a show on ESPN in Houston. It's the only show of its kind on the radio in Texas, and we normally have a casual conversation over drinks. That part was enough to shut down Willie Nelson. He doesn't drink.
Oh,
and so
wow.
his lady was like, all he does is smoke Willie's Reserve, which is his marijuana line.
Right.
And I'm not a marijuana smoker, but I was like, I wanted to say, if Willie Nelson wanted to come on my show and make out with me, I'd do it just for the story. Like, if we've got to, I don't smoke weed, but if we've got to smoke weed, I'll do it. I just want the opportunity to sit down and talk to the guy. And so I learned that moving forward, you have to present the pitch in more of a, hey, we're just looking to talk, sometimes or oftentimes over a few vintage whiskeys or bourbons, et cetera, et cetera. So you also have to do a little pre-research to find out who's sober, because you run into that issue a lot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, with celebrities, I'm sure you do. I mean, with us, with master distillers, master blenders, you don't really have to worry about that.
Not at all.
But yeah, I can only imagine dealing with that. So Matt, let's jump back to this Bombergers real quick. What do you get? What do you pick it up in terms of the nose on this one?
It's got like a nice brittle on the nose. Was kind of the first thing that I was picking up. And then it leads to like a softer nutty flavor, kind of like a raw hazelnut, but also has really nice juicy red wine fruits on it as well, like cherries, plum, kind of all those big red wine fruits with it as well. I also picked up like a sweet Luxardo cherry or some sort of a really sweet cherry, and then just a like really nice. You can tell that there's the different oak, the Chinkopin going on there. It just like has this. It's hard to describe it, like this dry, just different type of oaky aroma to it that just it hits well on the nose and balances well with the nice bright ruby fruit.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with it. The Chinkopin I've not had, that I know of anyway. I've not had it, so I'm not sure what the flavor notes are generally that would impart to the bourbon. But Matt, I think your notes just list. Of course, I'm always going to agree with you, but I mean, I think you're right. You're right on, man. Everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, that's right. So you get that sweetness, you get that ripe fruit, almost like kind of like I guess maybe a sherry cask or something that would give. Talking about Scotch, maybe you get that kind of a like ripe, rich kind of fruit. Maybe even dried fruits, but then you get that a little spiciness too, which I'm wondering if that comes from the oak. But very nice. Now, Kristopher, have you ever had the Bombergers before, or are you familiar with?
Yes, I've had. It's funny that brand. It's really interesting, the brands that kind of come out of nowhere, and then all of us, for a while they're a bit controversial, and they become mainstays. And Bombergers and Shanks were one of those two brands. Or both of those two brands had kind of a rough start. I think there was even a lawsuit. They're owned by the Michter's people, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Michter's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So there was originally, I think there's a lawsuit, or was a lawsuit, about either Bombergers or Shanks. But I think they're quality products. They're good. I love the cognac bottle shape. I mean, it's the Pappy bottle shape, right? Like it's
right.
almost the exact same glass. So it's great. I've had a few of their expressions, but nothing in the last 6 months or so.
You know, Chris, I was going to ask you in the first round, we were talking about Scotch and Lafroig and everything. What do you prefer Scotch? I mean, is that your whiskey of choice? Or...
No, if I had to be, I'm the whiskey guy.
Right.
I love whiskey. Scotch, I think right now it's more of an after dinner thing. Like lately, my wife and I have been really into some Glenfiddich and some single casks, but we're not. If I had to, I would say we drink 90% bourbon.
Oh, okay.
Almost daily.
Okay. Yeah. I do
daily.
too.
Don't tell my doctor, but definitely daily.
In Texas, that's pretty all right state to be from for bourbon and whiskey right now.
Yeah, it is.
A lot going on and a lot happening really fast down there too. We've been
absolutely
really, really impressed with all the Texas distilleries that we've had on.
Who all have you, like, what are some of the ones you talked to?
Oh, we had Lone Elm on, Still Austin.
That's right.
Definitely.
Who from Lone Elm?
Oh.
Tony Gonzalez, is that right?
No,
that was
their main guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Treaty. Yeah, hold on. You guys keep chatting. I'm gonna
look it
Kristopher.
I'm
gonna pull a Kristopher here and pull up my sheet.
the reason why I ask is because the main guy doesn't drink, and you were talking about not running into that issue.
Oh,
okay.
And I forget his name at the moment.
Is it Bill? Bill?
No. You might have talked to the distiller. The main guy I talked to. See, now I have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm like Treaty Oak. Tony Gonzalez. We talked to him.
Treaty Oak
from Treaty Oak.
Treaty Oak's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Garrison Brothers on. Was that right?
Yeah, Dan Garrison.
Which one? Dan? Oh, Dan's a character, man.
Yeah, and
he was something else, man. Yeah, definitely was. Bill Wofford, we had from Lone Elm.
Okay.
And I don't remember what Bill's.
Brandon Choate is the guy I'm talking about.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We had Bill on the show, but yeah, we've had some really good. Still Austin.
Yeah.
Was it Brandon Joldersma? Is that his name?
Right.
Brandon Jols.
They, one of the few distilleries in Texas using a column still. This is where Texas messed up. Texas, you talk to a lot of these distillers in Texas and everyone reminisces about a trip to Scotland and a pot still.
Yeah.
And most of them bought pot stills. And they want to tell you that the reason why Texas distilleries taste so drastically different is our climate, and that's bullshit. It's the cooking device, right?
Gotcha.
So all of your favorite bourbons, all of them, Woodford Reserve, Old Forester, Jack Daniels, Buffalo Trace, Pappy Van Winkle, all of them are column still distillate. They're cooked, they're cleaner. It's a much more pure spirit. It's, obviously easier to get to a cleaner, higher proof item. Whereas pot stills leave all the oils in the distillate, and it's a much more flavorful spirit, which works really well for used barrel spirits. Rum,
right.
used barrel. Scotch, got to be single malt Scotch has to be pot still, used barrels. So cognacs and brandies, they're cognac is pot still, Armagnac is column. But you have a very flavorful spirit that goes into a used barrel. Still Austin has been crushing it for the past couple of years. Now, there's other things that they do that are not like, there's other things that they could do that make it not taste like Kentucky bourbon. But I don't think it's the climate. That's a silly argument.
Yeah. Well, we've enjoyed having them on the show. I mean, it's great to see what Texas is doing, and it's always fun because I'm from Kentucky, so I always like to joke and say it has to be made here in Kentucky. But
for sure,
yeah, we all know otherwise. But going back to the Scotch, talking about that, we were talking about that certification that I'm working on. It's called the Certified Specialist or Certified Whiskey Specialist, and it's from the Council of Whiskey Masters, which is a relatively newer group, but they have some of the guys on their board that are. Oh, what's the? It's like the Order of the Quaich or.
Oh yeah, the Quaif or
Quaif, something like that. I don't know anything about Scotch, but then they also have some bourbon people like Clay Risen's on their board. Mike Veach is on there. Peggy Stevens is part of it as well. So they have it's a 3-tiered training system. So they have a certified bourbon professional, which I've done, and I'm working on the certified whiskey specialist right now, which involves understanding more about Scotch, but also just whiskeys around the world. It's really primarily based on Dave Broom's book, The World Atlas of Whiskey. So that's predominantly what it's around. And then the ultimate goal in April, they have the highest certification that they've done is called a Master of Bourbon. So I'm going to be working toward that to hopefully become one of the first masters of bourbon in the world. Christopher, we'll see if that works out.
I looked it up, the order of the Quake, and it's the Masters of, they do a level 2 or level 3, and then so you're trying to get the Master of Bourbon or Master of Scotch?
I'm going to do the Master of Bourbon, and they've not done that yet. So the first class is actually going to be at the end of April here in Frankfurt. They're going to do it at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. So the testing will be on site there. So it'll be like a 4-day program that we're going to be on site the last week of April. So that's my goal. They just did the first Scotch back, I think, in September, somewhere over in Scotland in a big castle. So I think 4 people were successful out of the 6 or 7 that applied for it. So we've got 6 candidates that have applied for the Master of Bourbon certification. So we'll see how that works out.
It's interesting. You know, we have this inherent cynicism when it comes to these things. I don't know if you guys are familiar. I don't know how long you guys have been kind of involved in the bourbon boom, but there was that controversy out of Austin. What's the name of that group? Dan and Rex, the Whiskey Tribe.
Okay.
So they offered a whiskey sommelier course.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I
and
remember.
It was greeted with great anger and fervor of cynical, the bourbon snobs were very upset about it. I'm curious, this is a new thing. They've never done it before. Do you think it's going to be well received and respected? I mean, if they're doing it at Buffalo Trace, I would think that there's a little support there.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. And just, like I said, I'm not familiar with the guys that are involved in terms of the board, guys and ladies. But, from the bourbon's perspective, they do have Clay Risen, who I think is a pretty respected journalist. Michael Veach, again, who I think has been in the
Bourbon Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And Peggy No Stevens is going to be involved with it as well. So, those are 3 names, and we've had Peggy on the show before, and I know her personally. So I have a great deal of respect for her, the first female master taster, that was in the industry, and just obviously a ton of experience and just very knowledgeable in what she does. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I think I felt comfortable enough after I looked at it and looked at the people involved and thought this is going to be something that's going to be interesting, and it's an opportunity for me to really kind of push myself in something that I'm super interested and fascinated about. Matt and I have both done the Ironman competitions. Matt's much better than I am, but again, it's just about the opportunity to push yourself and to find something that's a challenge, and then to try to see if you can succeed and overcome that challenge. And Matt's done a much better job at that than I have in Ironman.
We both covered the same distance.
Yeah, I don't like running unless something's chasing me, so I'm going to leave the Ironman stuff to Matt.
Oh, yeah, but kind of the same principle to me. Just never stop learning. I'm obviously getting older, and but I still want to maintain my ability to learn things, and I never want to reach that point where I just think I know enough or I'm comfortable where I'm at. So I always want to find something new and different to get involved with, Chris. So that's kind of my thought process behind it. And I think it seems legit to me. I feel comfortable enough with it that I invested the money to go ahead and do it. So that's what I'm doing for the next 2 months, is just spending my time learning more about Scotch and all sorts of stuff, and then focusing on bourbon. So, all right, Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey. People are probably like, man, why are we listening to Mark talk about this? What do you think in terms of the finish and the palate on this one?
This is a great juxtaposition to what we had in our first round, with the double oak being really sweet and smoky and dessert. Like, this is very savory. I find it's got like a big kind of a rosy floral bouquet on the palate, the nice dark stone fruit, like get red berries, juicy red fruit, kind of like some orchard fruit on it as well. And then I always find Michter's to be a little bit spicy. Even their bourbon, I find to be just a touch bit spicy. I find their rye to be spicy, something in their mash bill. And this definitely, to me, brings some of that with it. So there is some spice kind of cutting through and playing with all that fruit, and some black peppercorn, a little bit of baking spice, like almost a subtle heat, kind of like that vegetal heat that we sometimes talk about, like jalapeno or cayenne with it as well. Which it just drinks really well. It's just nice and savory and really, really delightful.
Yeah, that heat's a creeper. I agree. I was sitting here thinking the whole time we've talked about that kind of jalapeno vegetal heat. Vegetal. Man, I'm having a hard time with that word. Yeah. But Matt, it's like, I mean, I agree. It was like kind of that creeper slow heat that really built into a pretty intense spiciness to me. But you get that initial, like you said, that ripe fruit, that orchard fruit, the red fruit, the really nice juicy type of sweetness, and then that spice just kind of creeps up on you. So nice combination. Really, really happy to be able to pick up this bottle. So very nice.
How many different samples do you guys have? You have the double oaked, then this. The
Bombergers, and I've got Elijah Craig barrel proof, the A123 for the third and final round. So we bumped it up in proof. The Bombergers is 108.
Which is pretty high for something coming out of Michter's.
Yeah.
They go in super low.
And this A123, the brand new barrel proof Elijah Craig, is at 125.6. So I'm happy that they've kind of stepped it back up. Because, they had kind of dropped into that mid 100s, 115s or whatever. The proofs have kind of gone down a little bit. So I'm excited to get into this one in the third round. So guys, I tell you what, why don't we take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Kristopher Hart, the host of ESPN's Whiskey Neat, in just a minute. From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me still here in the Bourbon Life Studios is my good friend, Matt. Matt, thanks for sticking around for the third and final episode, or final round.
Final episode, that's right. I'm getting the boot
final
after
episode.
This, Matt.
Christopher's inspired me, man.
You're done.
Yeah, we're just going to start doing seasons. We've done 6 shows this season. We're done. That's it. We're off till next year.
52 episodes a season, and there we go.
Oh, man. Yeah. All right, Matt. Goodness gracious. So how you doing out there, man? You staying warm and toasty?
I am, Mark. I'm having a great time out here in front of your fireplace in the Bourbon Life Studios.
That's awesome. Why don't you tell everybody, if you would, kindly, who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. You can find our guest on ESPN's Whiskey Neat. He is also on Instagram as Whiskey Pete, and he is the owner and managing director of Gregarious Grump Spirits and also the co-founder of the Prideful Goat. Kristopher Hart, welcome back for the final round or session of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me back for a third round and the final episode of the show. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for closing it out with us.
Yeah.
Stop by tomorrow.
Did we ever tell you what happens?
And we'll clean everything up.
Yeah. Did we ever tell you what happens to our guests 2 weeks after they're on our show, Kristopher?
Oh, yeah. They get promoted and win the lottery.
Yeah.
There you go, man. We're going to start a new trend. That'll be great. That'll be awesome. So Matt and I are drinking this round. We got the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, the brand new release.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mark, you got to talk about this. This is like your bloodline here. Like, what are we drinking?
Yeah, if you drew my blood, it would probably be about 12% Elijah Craig Barrel Proof on any given day, because that is my go-to. And I feel so guilty sometimes when people say, "Hey, what's your daily drinker?" And I'm like, "Well, it's 125 proof Elijah Craig." But it's in my comfort zone. It's right where I live, and I enjoy it so much. But yeah, Matt, I did that video that I posted on TikTok
like the comfort
and
zone
Instagram.
Of Evel Knievel. Barrel proof is your daily comfort drink. Sorry. Anyway, go.
Yeah. So I ended up, I pulled out every Elijah Craig bottle, and that includes the 94 small batch stuff. And I got a bottle of 18 and a couple others. The old bottle that you guys bought me that was so nice of you guys to do. But I had 50 bottles of Elijah Craig. And that included all the barrel proofs, the private barrels, and everything else. But it was right at 50 bottles of Elijah Craig. My wife was not pleased when she came downstairs and saw those all sitting around on a table. But it is my thing, and I love Elijah Craig barrel proof. I cannot deny. But
Fantastic.
This one's the A123. This one comes in back into the 120s, man. It's 125.6 proof, so I'm excited to see that. But of course, it's a product of Heaven Hill. I'm still begging them at some point to put me on their media list where they will send me these bottles, at least one prior to the release, so I actually get it before most other people. But I've yet to attain the level of importance where they'll do that for me. But I'm hoping that 50 bottle video, because they did actually comment back on Instagram and said very nice. So I'm hoping that was enough to elevate me.
Why would they give their cash cow free bourbon?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you bought 50 bottles.
I'm personally funding their expansion right now
For real.
at Heaven Hill. So that's what I'm doing.
Half of their inventory.
Well, that's one of the, as someone, how long has the show been around? 2 years?
We just started our fourth season, so a little over 3 years.
Okay. So has that not been the hardest part of this? Is just trying to get freaking street cred with these distilleries, because I worked with for the Whiskey Social. So for the Whiskey Festival, you have to work with brands. So I've got the access to the brands. You would think that starting a show on ESPN, I'd be like, all right, give me my credentials. And
right.
it was tough at times. And there was at a certain point, I just gave up. I mean, there were some that, of course, gave the credentials and they would send us samples, and we started receiving things from Four Roses at one point. But Four Roses was the win, right? Like once I got that, I was like, all right, I'm in, I'm official. I had Matthew McConaughey on my show before Four Roses added me to their press list. It was tough.
Yeah, we're still struggling with that. Now I will say we did have I don't want to say the blessing, but COVID really was a double-edged sword. Obviously it affected negatively so many people, but for us as doing a show, because the distilleries were closed down, the master distillers weren't able to go out and do events. People weren't able to travel to the distillery, so they were looking for ways to reach an audience. So it was almost perfect timing, because we started the show 2 weeks before our governor shut the whole state down. It really opened a door for us, for these master distillers who didn't have anything else to do at that point in terms of reaching the public. So we were fortunate enough to get a lot of the master distillers on the show, and that's what really, I think, helped us grow. But yeah, we still can't get samples, and even after that, man. But hey, Matt, let's real quick, let's just go ahead and talk about the nose on this one. I'll just jump into it, man. I always get cherries. I always get that nice cherry aroma on this. I get brown sugar, burnt sugar, brown sugar. I get the oak on it. I'm not sure, because these used to be age stated, now they're not. I think they're still right around that 8-year range. I know a lot of the private barrels that have been coming out.
They don't say 12 on the side of that one?
Does it? Maybe I'm wrong, Matt. Oh shit, it does. I thought they had dropped that, but nope, you're right. Still 12 years old. All right.
It's still going to be 12 for the small batches. It's the barrel picks that they dropped it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
that was the whole barrier of entry when we talked to Bernie, saying, "Hey, why don't you guys do a single barrel program of your high proof stuff?" They said, "Well, we can't do that because then that will take away from the small batch allocation." And the solution hit them like a potato in the head, no pun intended, to freaking drop the age statement for the single barrel picks. So the single barrel picks are all like 8 years, 9 years, much younger.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, and you're absolutely correct. It is freaking delicious. It's a cherry bomb. I've always loved it. And I'm not supposed to say where Prideful Goat comes from, but when people always think it's Beam, I'm like, all right, try it next to a bottle of Baker's and tell me that that's the same liquid. And then try it next to a bottle of Elijah Craig and tell me it's not the same liquid. Potentially.
I got you.
In theory.
Yeah, there we go.
Theory.
If you need an attorney no, I'm just kidding. So let's talk about that, because that's a perfect segue, man. Let's jump in. Well, actually, Matt, I should have asked you about the nose on it, man, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't do that. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. The cherry is definitely there for me. Though on this, I'm getting like a brown butter cookie crumble, like a sweet cookie or like a sweet taffy, kind of saltwater taffy nose to it. But it's also got like a touch of like a savory sesame cracker. Like there's some sort of a crackery kind of sesame undertone to it. That's a little bit more savory and robust rather than just like the sweetness of cherries and vanilla and cream.
Okay. Very nice, Matt. Always such great descriptors. See, I should have just let you go first. Mm-hmm. You always win.
No. Hearing you talk about this would be like talking to a painter about their art.
There you go. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. All right, Christopher, let's jump back. Let's go back. We had a perfect segue, and then I had to ruin it. But let's go back. Let's talk about what you're doing with the Gregarious Grump. And then also let's talk about the Prideful Goat. So with the Gregarious, I have a hard time, man.
It's okay. It's okay. Gregarious Grump.
There you go. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Tell everybody exactly what that is.
Yeah. So essentially, I'm one of the many things we had to cut off my resume for the intros was that I run the Houston Bourbon Society. It's about 14,000 people. It's I've said this so much it belongs on a shirt, but it's the largest single market group in North America. So if you're focusing on a single market, whether it be Dallas or Louisville, the Houston Bourbon Society is the biggest. We do about 50 to 55 barrel picks a year. It's a bunch of nuts, right? Online, 9 o'clock at night, getting a little spicy, arguing over whether or not Jack Daniels is bourbon. I've had to slap some wrists. So I'm a very gregarious person in nature. I like to drink. I like to have fun. I like to have a conversation. We can debate whatever you want to debate. I'm a, what do you call them? Like a bro intellectual. But at night, when some people get behind a keyboard, they could be a bit spicy. So in the group, I've had to slap some hands a little bit, get them to calm down, mute some people after a certain point. Everyone play nice, especially during election season or COVID season. Everything would set off everyone else for some reason or another. And my sister-in-law, God bless her, Katie, said that I was the grumpiest and most gregarious person she knew. And I said, that would either be a fantastic stage name for a rap artist or a great name for an independent bottler. And so we launched Gregarious Grump in 2018, and we didn't want to touch whiskey. I love whiskey, but I wanted to avoid being yet another whiskey brand. And so we did rum to start.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did some, all single barrels, cask strength, unfiltered, unadulterated, don't touch it. The way it tastes out of the barrel is the way that God meant for it to taste. And then we did cognac, and then the Prideful Goat fell into our lap. So what happened was, I didn't want to touch whiskey, but we found some 15-year-old juice from a legacy distillery that was available, and it was really good. And I can't say where it's from, but it tastes like cherry cough syrup. And me and Randall Sullivan said, hey, man, I found some liquid. Randall Sullivan is the host of Bourbon Real Talk. He's a great guy based out of Dallas. He said, hey, man, I found some single barrels of 15-year-old liquid. Turns out it wasn't single barrels, they were totes. And a single barrel pick turned into let's start a brand. So I said, let's start a brand. I came up with the name Prideful Goat. And we went back and forth through text for a while. I wanted something that could be something bigger long term. For instance, Prideful Goat. What is that? Where does that come from? It sounds to me like a great Irish pub.
Yeah.
I've always wanted an old Irish pub, the Red Rooster, the Brown Hen, whatever you want to call it. And the Prideful Goat seemed like something. Even the logo would be a perfect round sign on a wooden plank hanging outside of an old pub. And we liked that idea because he's in Dallas, I'm in Houston, and we thought, long term, what if we wanted to take the brand and turn it into a bar? Then
Right.
we could franchise it, one in Dallas, one in Houston. We're running the same bar in different cities, and the Prideful Goat was born. I wasn't gonna touch whiskey, but it's hard to pass up cask strength 15-year-old really good bourbon at a crazy good price. So we released it. The first batch was $100. 15-year-old bourbon, $100.
Wow. That's great. So independent bottling, can you kind of talk about that concept? I know that's in Scotch in Scotland. There's a lot of independent bottlers that do things, but that concept really hasn't taken hold. I think it's starting. We've seen like Lost Lantern that's doing that kind of concept as well. So can you kind of talk about the independent bottling process?
Sure. So an independent bottler, here we would call them rectifiers, and it's actually something very common. In fact, you may think of someone named Pappy Van Winkle. That entire brand isn't owned by Buffalo Trace.
Right.
The brand, they partnered through a joint venture agreement to have Buffalo Trace. In fact, the guy that reviewed the guy that reviewed that contract is based in Houston, a great guy named Randy Blank. He's one of the few people in the world who has a single barrel of Lot B, Van Winkle 12. It's called Van Blankel. He paid $37 a bottle for it. It's now trading for $3,500.
Wow.
So
the
guy that reviewed that contract with Julian and them and Preston was back in 1999 was a guy named Randy Blank. And rectifiers they've been around a long time. Essentially, I don't make liquid. I find liquid that is in excess because every distillery in the world has to project out. And the problem, like as a business owner, you want to project out the next 12 months, the next 24 months. But as a whiskey distiller, you have to think what's gonna be happening in the market 8 years from now, 10 years from now, because you're putting liquid in the barrel now for what happens then.
Mm-hmm.
And they are often wrong.
Right.
So what happens is they're left with a lot of excess liquid, not reject liquid, not liquid that didn't pass the stuff, literally just liquid that's more than they can sell. And they need to build a rick house so we can liquidate, the whole reason bourbon, you want to talk about as you get out of being a lawyer, bourbon brokers, that's good money.
Sure.
I mean, you never even have to touch the barrel and you can just transfer it between people. But so rectifiers, you find liquid in the world that's delicious, that deserves to be drank, and you start a brand, you put it under your label. Sometimes you do things with it. One of the things that we did for Prideful Goat is we broke it down. The first order was 286 barrels. We went through, we isolated, I want to say 15 barrels that were unique or different enough to be single barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And then we broke the batches down by proof, when they were bottled, when they were barreled, when, the barreling date, their ages. And so every release got higher in proof.
Okay.
There's a little exception to that. If I remember correctly, it was batches 2 and 3 of the rye. Batches 2 and 3 of the rye, there was a label mix-up. So there was a staffing shortage during COVID where nobody wanted to work. We got these things, what were they called? Stimulus checks.
Right, yeah.
So we had trouble staffing a bottling line. And so what we did is we said, okay, we need to do the next batch of labels. We gave a roll of labels to this group of people and a roll of labels to this group of people, and both people wrote a different ABV on it. And so the idea originally was to be an increase with every batch, but I think batches 2 or 3 of the rye batches 2 was higher than batches 3. I can't remember the exact details, But essentially, yeah, we do small batch blends of 20 to 30 barrels, small batch runs, all hand labeled, hand bottled, of about 700 to 900 cases at a time. Very, very small batches. We're in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Kentucky. Have you guys seen our stuff in Kentucky yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Matt said he has seen. I have not seen it, but Matt said he had. So
yeah, and then we're fully transparent about it. This is from MGP. This is we're as transparent as we're allowed to be. The 2 6-year expressions are both from MGP. We can say that. The 15-year was a bit more controversial, but it's amazing. This is the power of Fred Minnick. I love him to death. He's a dear friend. But he's the one that I think that first said that they're all beam. And then and then everyone that knew anything about bourbon and had a voice online took it as doctrine. And we had to go and literally say, hey, no, we have the paperwork. The way that this is handled is you buy from a broker and or directly from the distillery in some cases, and they give you the details, all the paperwork, none of it said beam. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why the bourbon community was so passionate that it wasn't anything other than beam. And I didn't know what to say other than try them next to each other. But
right.
we actually looked at buying some 10-year-old beam from Beam directly, a lot of it, like 300,000 gallons. And we asked for a sample, and it was the old Baker's mash bill. Baker's changed its mash bill like in 2011, 2012. And then of course they changed their bottle a few years later. So now you have this beautiful Baker's bottle that's really great. But if you taste the liquid next to Baker's, it is identical. It is the same. It tastes like Baker's. And then you taste it next to a bottle of Prideful Goat, and it doesn't remotely. And then people say things like, "I get it's very nutty." It's not nutty at all. You're crazy. Like I would not lie if we had Beam Liquid. I love Beam Liquid. I love Baker's. I love Booker's. I love what they do. I guess what I'm really ranting about is just the conspiratorial nature of the bourbon community is pretty intense.
Sure.
But that being said, we try to be as transparent as we can.
Yeah, and we had that debate too on our show about a couple other, the 15-year-olds, and it was where was it from, and that was it. It was, pretty sure it's Beam. We think it's Beam, but we don't know, but we're kind of speculating on that one. But the other brand was also mentioned as well. So that's funny that you bring that up, but it's true. I mean, I think once the influencers start saying something, it's like automatically there it is. It's
anybody with an audience. Yeah,
that's right.
It's kind of the dispute that happens with the certifications, because with no oversight, anyone could be called a master distiller.
Right.
Anyone can be called a master blender, right? Like it's kind of arbitrary in nature. There is no oversight, so you can go with whatever you want to go with. The thing with this. One brand I know of, Old Soul, they came forward and they said that their stuff was distilled in, I think, Frankfort, Kentucky, which, of course, the old Granddad distillery is there. So people thought Beam, which, okay, on the surface, I'm with you. It makes sense. You heard Fred Minnick say Beam. It says distilled in Frankfort. It says distilled in Frankfort, Kentucky. But that old Granddad distillery is a bottling plant. It's not a distillery. They're not distilling. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so that kind of then it's this whole thing. I don't know why I sound so riled up about it. I'm not upset. It's just so interesting how people
sound
are
upset, Krister.
Yeah, I know. The more I'm listening to myself, I'm like, hey man, calm down. It's fine.
Oh man. So let's talk about. We're at the end, actually close to the end, but I just want to get clarification. So you decided to do the Gregarious Grump. And you released cognac, you released rum, cognac, and you decided to do the whiskey separately as the Prideful Goat, but kind of the same concepts behind, but just different liquids, or I mean, is it kind of the same concept for both brands?
Yeah, so it's all unadulterated, unfiltered, as raw product as it can get. We do it all in small batches or single barrel. I mean, the cognac releases were blends of 4 or 5 barrels at a time. The rums are all single barrels. The bourbon, we do have a single barrel line for the rye. We bought more rye from BT he's the president of Sagamore. So they had some MGP rye available come up. So we bought 350 more barrels of rye for that. The concept is just a reasonable price, no bullshit story, as transparent as possible. And by golly, do they both look pretty. I mean, they're so pretty. So they look good. They taste good. They're straightforward. That's all we want to do is we like it. It's the most fun I've ever had. It's like podcasting. It's you do it because you feel good doing it. You get something out of it. And me and Randall spend a lot of time, plus the head distiller over at Gulf Coast, blending and tasting. Every single time we do a buy, we go through and we taste every single barrel.
Wow.
And so that first run of 286 barrels took 4 weeks of tasting samples to get through them all. And then 350 barrels from Sagamore, they're still sitting at MGP. We've not brought them over yet, but the moment they land, it's going to take me another 2 months of tasting. And it's the most fun you have. You guys are drinking buddies, right? So getting my drinking buddy to drive down from Dallas and us to taste through the barrels, it's the most bonding experience. It's so rewarding in every way.
Hey, well, if you want to, shave a couple of weeks off that, I'm available.
You're available?
Yep, I'll come down there. We will get through them.
Oh, man. Matt, let me hear your thoughts on this palate and the finish on this A123 Elijah Craig barrel proof.
It hits a lot of the notes that we always come to expect out of this. That cherry, the oak is right there. And something about this on the finish, it turns kind of sweet. Like it has the flavors reminiscent to me of Neapolitan ice cream, kind of like that strawberry, vanilla, chocolate on it as well. And then like a little bit of spice and then kind of like a waffle coney type, like sweet, baked flavor at the end, but certainly does not burn out at 125.6 proof. Just another great Elijah Craig barrel proof.
Yeah, I'm happy to have this one. Never could get to 922. Go figure. Where are you, Heaven Hill? Send a bottle, man. But I agree,
I'm hoping
Matt.
they catch up. The amount of available liquid out there is just so limited from them, and they consistently make some of the best liquid in the market. I mean, there's a cult following for Mellowcorn.
Huh.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's good liquid, man.
I love it.
Yeah, we had Bernie on the show. I mean, just a great dude. He was a lot of fun to chat with. So, and he's like preaching the gospel of bottle and bond and mellow corn. So that was fun. So, Christopher, what's the future look like for you, for your brand, for everything you're into? Can you talk about that?
I mean, right now it's expansion. So the biggest endeavor that we've had to face is knocking on each individual state's door, trying to find a distributor, play up who we are. I'm Chris, I have a show on ESPN. We have we give them the track record, the numbers of how the product is selling, and then try to get it in the market. So we're in a dozen states right now. We'd like to expand this year to at least another dozen. It's daunting. It's exhausting. It's full of disappointment, and it's the hardest. I've said this before. The hardest part of having a brand is distribution. It's the most important part, and it's the part that sucks at their jobs the most. Distributors care the least, and they mean the most. The most important aspect. And so trying to find a good distributor that cares, that's willing to put in the effort, that has an organized sales team, it's hard. Last year we had to fire our distributor in California. Our distributor in California, we met with Bevmo, the big chain out there, and they committed to 2,000 cases of our product in their stores. and the distributor never got in the car, never put the keys in the car to just simply deliver the product. And
Wow.
4 months later, of like, hey, have you delivered the product? Have you followed up on this? What's going on? The main guy we were talking to at Bevmo was fired for a different reason, totally unrelated. And so that opportunity was gone.
Gone.
You know, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in cases that just went away. And so we replaced it with a new distributor in California called Collier Barnett. It's a mom and pop shop. They've been around the last few years. They're absolutely fantastic. They've I think at one point they were handling Smoke Wagon in California back when Smoke Wagon was before they were Smoke Wagon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they couldn't be better people. Collier Barnett is a fantastic distributor, and it's literally the hardest part. But we're doing it. Randall and myself have both. We're I don't want to jinx it. Fingers crossed. But we should be launching in Alaska this year pretty soon with Glazers, Southern Glazers. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's the future, is visiting as many states as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of contrary to that, because obviously it's been an experience. It's obviously been difficult at times. What would you say has been the best part of your whole journey? Looking back, not just over the spirit, I mean, just everything in general that you're into and that you're doing. What's been the best part?
I mean, it's as much as I'm complaining about it, it's the most fun I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's all I want to do. If I can spend the rest of my days blending and making good products and getting it, out the door and into stores, I would give up everything else. I mean, I've got a couple of bachelor's degrees in different things and have worked in the manufacturing space and marketing and sales my whole life, like you have as a lawyer, but your passion isn't being a lawyer. That pays the bills. The passion is the whiskey. My wife and I gotten into it. We had, several kids since we've gotten into it. It's a big part of our lives. All we do is, I'll be in Wisconsin this week. I'll be in Mexico next week. We're doing is traveling the world, trying to find ways to get our very reasonably priced item out to the world. And it's romantic. The whole thing is very appealing.
No, that's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. Congratulations for following your passion and doing, what you love, man. That's more than I can say that I've done. But I love talking to guys like you because it always gives me hope, even though I'm not a young whippersnapper like you and Matt. I keep thinking there's still hope yet, that opportunities will present themselves, or that I can create those opportunities. Who knows, right? But it's always refreshing to see guys that are super passionate about what they're doing, like you, and are chasing those dreams and running them down, man. That's really cool.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, there's still plenty of disappointment in it, but you're hoping for there's a couple of great independent bottlers. I can think of Barrel. I see behind Matt, he's got a bottle of Barrel up on that mantle.
Yeah,
Barrel is exactly that. I'm going to say this. I probably shouldn't.
If you change your mind, I can go back and edit it out later. Just take a pause.
I'll say it. It's a weird comparison, but it's a comparison that would only pop up in my head as I had a drink. So I always told my wife, we have 4 kids. I love being a dad. I love raising kids. I'm really, really sad that phase is over. Your whole life, you think about getting married and the romance of getting married and falling in love and the romance of having kids and building a family. And I realized during COVID that is behind us. I can't have any more kids. You're past that phase in life. And that's really sad to me. I love what I've said before is that if I ever won the lottery and my wife's body could handle it, I'd have 12 more kids. Like I would just keep going. That's exactly what I want to do with whiskey. If I ever win the lottery and my body can handle it, I would keep making as many This is the most fun. Barrel finishing is something we just started doing with the Prideful Goat. It's exciting. It's nerve wracking because you think of how much money you put into testing that out, right? We fill a few barrels. We put Prideful Goat Rye into a couple of Caribbean rum barrels. Holy shit, please be good. Please don't be disgusting. It's going to cost an arm and a leg if it's gross. And then it yields something beautiful and exciting. So that's all I want to do. So long story short, I'm buying lottery tickets and praying for the best.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Christopher, we appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us tonight. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for asking. And sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to apologize because I got to tell you, man, my hat's off to you. There was this weird couple of weeks where you were messaging me right in the middle of a meeting, and then I would forget to come back to you. And you were so patient, and you were so kind, and you were so persistent. And I genuinely, from the very beginning, wanted to do the show. And I felt like a total Jerkosaurus Rex over here for not responding timely. So just thank you for being patient and making the whole thing happen.
Well, I appreciate that very much. It's a skill that I've developed over the last 30 years. I call it patient persistence, as a matter of fact. I mean, everybody is involved in different stuff, and you never know what's going on in someone else's life. So I just try to put myself in their shoes, and I don't take it personally. I don't take it that someone, if I message 5 or 6 times and I never get anything, or I just get a big F you, then I'm going to be like, okay, this person's not interested in doing my show. But I could tell that you were, and
I wanted to make sure because I felt such a jerk.
Not a problem at all. Trust me, man. I get it. Now, if you'd scheduled and canceled and scheduled and canceled and scheduled and canceled, then I would have probably been like, you know what, dude, I'm coming to Houston. And
have you ever had that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Who was it? Say the name. I said some names tonight. You say some names.
It's a celebrity brand that was distilled down at Green River. And the guy used to be a quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We had scheduled and canceled 4 times.
With her or with him?
With him. Yeah. Well, with his people. But yeah. And I was just finally like, you know what? I just told his people it'll never happen again. And that's it. And you'll never be on the show. So that's just kind of where we left it.
So let me give you a slight argument against
okay.
Against it. Okay. So my wife and daughters are a huge fan of Ian Somerhalder.
Yeah.
Vampire Diary guy, big celebrity.
Oh yeah.
When we were coming out of COVID, we planned this huge trip to fly to Los Angeles. We were going to go talk to Coleman Domingo from The Walking Dead. Anthony, what's Anthony's last name? Anthony Homelander from The Boys. Anthony Starr.
Okay.
So at the time, it was between seasons 1 and 2. He wasn't that big of a star, but now he's much bigger. Homelander from The Boys on Amazon Prime. It's a great show, great comic book show. If you ever want to know what happens if realistically, if us humans got superpowers, we'd be total pieces of shit. And William H. Macy to film at his house, and we had to agree not to mention the college scandal, which we were fine with. And then Ian Somerhalder. And we booked this hotel. We flew out a crew of 4 people. It cost us, I'm not even kidding, not quite multiple tens of thousands, but between 10 and 20 for this trip.
Wow.
All this equipment, several PA. I mean, we had our entire production crew out there. And of course, we did hit Coleman Domingo. We did hit Anthony Starr. We did hit William H. Macy. But frickin' Ian Somerhalder. This was already his 2nd cancellation.
Oh, man.
And it was the day before he was supposed to be there. We booked out the top of the hotel. We set up the cameras. And we even had to send a call sheet, like a thing to I guess it's a thing that happens in movies where you send it to the star and it tells them when to arrive on set, what to be wearing, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I sent a call sheet. I had to Google call sheet. And then he stood us up. And I was so freaking mad. And the excuse was, and this is what was tricky about COVID, everyone would say this. Now, whether or not it was true, who knows? Either they were exposed to COVID or someone they knew was immunocompromised and they couldn't make the taping.
Yeah.
And totally understand. I wasn't mad. I was skeptical. I was cynical, but I wasn't mad. It was understandable. I get it. We got most of what we needed out of the trip. And then like 6 months later, his people reached out to me again. I was going to leave it alone. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to hit you again.
Right.
His people reached out and were like, hey, we'd like to get him on the show. And he did. He's done it twice since then. And so what I've learned is when you're interviewing some of these celebrities, they're extremely volatile. Their schedules are volatile. Their commitments are volatile. They'll even, I'm not going to say who, but a very notable celebrity was like, yeah, I'll send you a bottle of our new stuff coming out. That never happened. And I've learned to kind of, it's the most rolling with the punches you have to absolutely do. Now, that being said, I don't give a shit about football. Screw that guy. And I'm happy you told him no.
Oh, I appreciate the support on that one. No, but we've had Ian and Paul on the show twice. They've actually been on our show, so they're
great guys.
Yeah,
they're super great. They did the show twice. They were awesome, and I never brought it up to them again. And I'll take you one step further. I cannot believe how kind both of them are. Randomly, in the middle of the night, I wouldn't say middle of the night, but like late in the evening, I would get an Instagram DM from one or the other. They saw something on my feed. They just like, hey man, I just was thinking about you. I had such a great time with you on the show. Thanks for the, like just extremely kind and awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, maybe it really was just a schedule thing, but it's so hard to buy into it in the moment,
Oh yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. Well, I'll have to step back and remove myself from the situation and not get upset, right, yeah. Matt's my level-headed guy.
I mean, don't get me wrong; it's extremely inconsiderate. It's extremely frustrating at times. I totally understand, but it's one of the things where I've learned. Okay, well, maybe it really was just the volatility of their schedules.
Sure. Well, Kristopher, we appreciate it so much that you showed up. And that you hung out with us, even though the samples did not. Well, you need to go check on that because somewhere there's samples floating around for you. But
I'm going to find it. I promise.
That I hope so. But definitely have enjoyed the show. But before we wrap it up, anything you want to add before we get out of here tonight?
No, thanks for having me. It's been a good time. I will find those samples, track them down, and drink them and enjoy them. I'll probably do so with my loving wife.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Matt, anything you want to add before we close it up?
Hey, Kristopher, thanks again for carving out some time for us. We really appreciated having you here and just getting to chat with you and hearing about your story. And thanks for being a guiding light to all of us here that are dreaming and thinking about trying to make the industry happen for us. It's cool to see it come through for someone and to have somebody feel so special and so blessed and to really want to give back.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's extremely kind. It's the nicest thing I've ever heard. I'll be honest with you, that was awesome.
Matt's a wordsmith. I'm just telling you, man. He's something else with his notes, tasting notes, and his.
They're ridiculous. They're awesome.
I'm telling you, man. He's missing out. We're gonna have to get him a career in the industry outside of podcasting, I think. But Kristopher, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And again, for working with me. I'm sure you get people that reach out to you on Instagram and say, hey man, what's up? But I appreciate you being gracious enough to respond back and to agree to be on the show. And just thanks for following up and really appreciate that and appreciate what you're doing. Everything that you're involved with. It's really, really cool. Like I said, to see what you've been able to do, and how you do it with such a passion, man. So, kudos to you for that. And, I do, before we wrap it up, have to thank all of our sponsors. So thank you guys for everything you do for us. Thank you to all of our listeners. Again, whatever time of day it is, wherever it is you are, thanks for joining us and tuning in. We really appreciate that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook. You can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We would love to have you in that group. Shoot us an email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And if you feel so inclined, Please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.